I wasn't that surprised that an accident caused severe global digital disruption. I guess I was a little surprised that the cause of it was a software update from a very well respected cybersecurity company. So we've talked for a long time in the industry about the inherent fragility of foundational parts of the internet, these little bits of activity and infrastructure that underpin the whole thing. And if they go wrong, they can have really serious global consequences. But for the most part, I wouldn't have expected that to come from this source. We've had large scale digital disruptions before. This may be one of the biggest, probably the biggest. Will it change the industry, the tech industry? Well, I don't think there are any easy solutions to these global outage vulnerabilities that are quick, easy, or cheap. But there are, this isn't the only single point of failure in global technology, and fixing them all in a way that's consistent with the economics of the internet is really, really hard. There's going to have to be a hard look at resilience. The big prize is, can you, as technology changes and evolves, can you design out these flaws of the sort of first generations of technology? And that's incredibly difficult. It's also largely, sadly for us in Europe, it's an American conversation essentially, because that's where all the tech is. If there are governments, whether in the UK and the European Union, whatever, thinking, well, what can we do about this? Well, actually, it's because we become dependent on a very American version of technology, and the power to do anything about that doesn't rest in this continent. So I wouldn't bet on it. I think over time, if we get this right, and the US government is quite rightly interested in what they call secure by design technology and so forth, where these things can't happen so easily. I mean, that is the way forward, but it's monumentally hard to do, and it requires American leadership. It's not something governments can fix quickly, easily, or cheaply, and it requires a major dialogue with the tech industry. It requires looking strategically at how tech evolves, because you're not going to rip this all out and start again. But as newer technologies come in, you can look at how they're run, how they're configured, how they're architected, how they're regulated, how they're incentivized, and try and learn from some of these lessons in the past. So it's a long, slow process. So we're going to have to get used to stuff like this happening for quite a while to come. There's sort of good news and bad news in terms of lessons from this. The good news is, actually, perhaps paradoxically, it'd be quite hard to do this sort of operation as a hostile act. It's much easier to do it by mistake. In the short term, there are very hard questions for CrowdStrike. How on earth did this update get through quality control? Because clearly the testing regime, whatever it is, failed. I mean, that's self-evident. I think there are questions for Microsoft. I mean, its main competitors in this space, their services weren't affected, and clearly, the sort of triggering event was not Microsoft's fault, but clearly Windows is designed in such a way that left it susceptible to a supplier's efforts going wrong. Is that really sort of sustainable? So those are sort of some of the short-term questions for the companies involved. The medium term, the world's got to learn to cope with IT failure better than we currently do. It's not going to get any worse, because, I mean, it was a disaster, but the cause of it was a single cause. It was quickly identified and it was stopped, and now we know how to fix it. So I think there are sort of 2 or 3 things that will affect who recovers first and how long it takes overall. So the first thing is, how quickly can different organizations implement CrowdStrike's fix for this error. And as we already know, in some cases they're saying, I have to reboot machines up to 15 times to get it to work, and we're talking about individual machines. They can't just uninstall it, which sometimes you can do, but not in this case. You can't uninstall it centrally, even at organizational level. So that's a pain for lots of organizations, but it's going to have to be done, and that takes a bit of time. I don't think we're talking a very, very sustained crisis that you and I will be talking about. We might be talking about it next weekend. I doubt we'll be talking about it next month, other than in retrospect.